Thank you very much. Can everyone hear me okay? Yeah? Awesome. So where are we? So my basic presentation is almost a follow-up to what Ryan was saying. So Ryan was setting the scene for what the Scottish Government's doing with the Standard Information Management Plan. So I'm coming at it from a client information manager and how I actually assist clients to actually develop this strategy themselves. So what does a client information manager do? Well, we're basically there to help the client understand overall strategic benefits, what's actually possible, discuss with the client's asset management team for what they actually need to actually deliver as well, assist in the development of their AIR, their asset requirements, their exchange requirements, or what we actually call now the SIMP, which is the Standard Information Management Plan, and then finally validate all the task team deliverables when they're actually being handed over at each stage of the project as well. So it's not just a case of we're helping the client specify what the standard is, but when the delivery team start to deliver it, we're also validating what they're actually handing over to make sure it actually meets those requirements as well. So we're there to back up the client to make sure what the designers, what the contract they're actually handing over actually meet those requirements as well. So what does that actually look like? So obviously just looking at the standard client requirements, you get your OIR, you get AIR, EIR, you get all the IRs. So obviously this is basically where the SIMP comes in. We then have what the design teams start to do. So they start to deliver their asset requirements. And again, sorry, you can't see that. Also the project requirements, so your project model, all your documents and your data. The contractor then comes on board and start to now add all the as-built data. That then gets put up to the CAF-FM system. And then we have the project team's BIM information manager, obviously assisting the design team actually pull all the information together, and then obviously they're working with us as the client information manager to make sure they're doing it correctly in the right order as well. Again, this is all mapped out in ISO Part 2, and again, this isn't hashed list. These sort of requirements hasn't changed almost in a decade now. Again, even PAS Part 2 had geometric models, all your data structures using Colby or BS112 Part 4, and then finally exporting PDFs or drawings. And again, this is effectively what we're trying to achieve. So we're making sure everyone's actually building their models correctly. All your documents are linked to the models. All the data is all exported using Colby. Again, this can also be done through IFC and open standards. And then finally, it's all uploaded to the CAF-FM system at the end as well. So again, following ISO Part 2, ISO Part 1, ISO Part 2, and then finally ISO Part 3 methodologies. So how does that tie into the SIMP works? So I'll just concentrate on a few areas because obviously we don't have time to cover absolutely everything. So again, the SIMP, as Ryan pointed out, it was developed as part of the LEAP funded project, which is the Learning Estates Investment Program. And again, I would cover the workbook, some of the mapping criteria, and some of the asset registers as well. So looking at the main workbook, effectively we're trying to take a standard you'll see in typical projects, you get EIRs or 50-page plus EIRs. We're basically trying to cut through what John Ford from Gallifrey Try talks about on Twitter quite a lot. There's almost like the BIM prattle, cut away all the fluffy stuff. So we're just trying to almost take away a standard 50-page EIR and develop that into almost like 17 pages of what the actual requirements are. There's no ambiguity here. It is that these are actually what the clients look for, and I think that's one of the great benefits of what the SIMP is actually trying to achieve here. Part of that, in the SIMP, we have something called the project information requirements. So those who don't know, this is basically what are the questions clients need to ask and what typical deliverables are they actually expecting to receive, that those questions are actually going to answer as well. We use quite a unique method. The MBS, before they took down the actual MBS BIM toolkit, you could actually export a standard project, which actually had task 5, which has about 300 PIR questions. So we use that as almost like a roadmap, how we can actually show clients these are the typical deliverables or typical questions should actually be asking is actually part of those requirements as well. So again, we found that's a good roadmap. Again, a lot of clients we found really struggled because a lot of clients, they know what they want, but they don't know how to ask questions. Or they don't know what their internal review processes are. So that's probably one of the biggest challenge we're probably found actually trying to implement SIMP, is trying to get clients to understand what is their actual review process. What do they actually need to sign off? Because as we know, a lot of clients don't want to say they approve information. They mostly just say there's no comment, so there's no legal ambiguity there. So there's quite a few things we need to work through in that as well. Next, we have what's called the asset information requirements, which is effectively trying to work through initially we had, it's almost like 1,400, the full NRM3 codes, working through now what the clients think maintainable assets are, but also you can't see the top here, but also we try and tie that into like planned preventive maintenance, any statutory requirements, how does that tie in the SFG20, so there's a whole bunch of things there. And again, it's purely yes and no, does the client think this is maintainable, and would they actually need the design team to deliver and handle from that as well. So again, it's all about trying to reduce this ambiguity. Next, we've got the famous COBE. Again, just making sure that clients understand what COBE is, but more importantly, what the designers and contractors are actually going to deliver at the end of the project as well. So again, just try and map all this sort of stuff back together as well. One of the other templates we're using is called Template 4, which is effectively all about FM and data mapping requirements. This is where it starts to get tricky because, again, a lot of clients will have a CAFM system, but they don't necessarily know how to integrate COBE. And again, if we're trying to get the design teams to actually deliver COBE at the end of the project, then we need to make sure it actually maps correctly. So as part of this, they had this whole mapping criteria. The example I've got on the screen here is almost like the client had over 100 assets, with over 900 parameters to their asset management system. So they're using an asset, quite a lot of the councils in Scotland and the UK use Technology Forge as a CAFM system, which is quite immature. And some of the new versions of Technology Forge can take IC and COBE, but in this case, the client was using an old version to have to manually map all, which is quite a challenge. So it'll be quite interesting to see how the contractor handles this when it finally comes on board. Lastly, we have something called Template 5, which is basically the final asset register that the contractor is actually going to hand over. What I've showed you on the screen here, we'll try to show you, is effectively we were trying to be a bit pragmatic and actually show the contractor these are the assets that we expect you to deliver, and almost be a bit pragmatic and tell them yes or no questions for what health and safety information they're looking for, what installation data, what maintenance requirements they're looking for as well, rather than just say we want absolutely everything. We'll try to work with the client to make sure you only deliver exactly what we're actually needing for. So try and be a bit pragmatic in that sort of sense as well. And that's actually worked quite well for a few of the contractors have actually came on board to begin with as well. So just a bit of a recap. SIMP 1, we're currently using it on 12 projects, roughly about £300 million just now. The average SIMP took between 3 months to 12 months to deliver. 99% of the projects are worked on. If it's the council's first SIMP project, it will take them almost a year. We're almost at stage 4 before it's actually fully developed. But so the rest of the design team know it's an ongoing process, which is fine, because again, once it's actually been fully developed on the first project, it's almost a save as it can be used in multiple projects going forward as well, which is one of the key benefits here, is to actually have a full asset requirements fully developed that various design teams can use in other projects as well. Again, the biggest challenge was basically getting time from the client and asset management team. That's been very, very tricky. If the client is employing us as client information manager to actually almost educate them on what there is they're trying to achieve and what they're trying to deliver, if they don't understand it, then there is a lot of education. You have to go through that process to make sure they fully understand what they're looking for as well. And then where Ryan had pointed out, the SIMP has been upgraded to version 2, which got released a few months ago. So again, we're currently developing that in 2 projects. Ryan had also mentioned one of the biggest benefits of SIMP version 2 is the asset register I showed you had to run through the full NRM3 list, whereas now we've got a condensed 411 maintainable assets. So it's actually a more definitive set the client can actually start to work from straight away. So it's using that as a basis. And as Ryan pointed out, we've used, again, us and Virtualify used mapping. So we've got 411 assets that have been fully mapped to PR codes, SS codes, NRM, HT20, NRM3, IFC enumerations as well. So it's all in there to actually help design teams export as much open standards, fully mapped data as possible. But again, it's open source, it's out there for industry to look at, so again, it'd be good to get some feedback on how we're actually progressing on that as well. And then finally, what we see as value is bringing this client information manager. We provide training, free training for everyone in the design team. We have a full standardized setup for information management, and we do some pretty in-depth analysis Sometimes we do analysis well over 2 or 3 million bits of data from various bits of models, and we send it back fully color-coded. So it's not just a case of you're 3% compliant. We'll actually show you where the 97% is actually missing, so it's fully coordinated. And again, if you want to know more about that, oops, that's bang on time. I will be a training session at 3 p.m. this afternoon called the OCD of an Information Manager. And that's bang on time. Thanks so much. I talk too quick.
Perfect. Well done. 1, 2. Thank you very much, Graham. I'm really impressed by our presenters today. They're excellent at timekeeping, but also I believe, I'm sure you'd agree, we have an excellent flow between not only understanding what our information management requirements should be, but also how do we make sure it's compliant. So now it's time to introduce David, who will tell you more about compliance.